Episode 2, Psychological Safety, Stage 1, Inclusion Safety. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday Moments with Mabinti. So before we actually get into it today, I think I owe you all an apology because I was due to post last week, but I didn't. Making myself accountable to you all, apologies. But we are back with episode 2, so let's get into it. So we're going to talk about psychological safety in relation to diversity, equity, inclusion, but most importantly, belonging. The first thing to note is that psychological safety is different depending on the lens you look at it through. If you're looking at trust and you're looking at organizational development, growth, then psychological safety is very much what the definition says it is, which I'll tell you in a moment. However, if you are looking at psychological safety through the lens of culture and through the lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and the reason why I paused is I was just about to give you the acronym, but I've got to learn not to say DEIB, but to say diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, which is a mouthful. Then it means something completely different. And we're going to go into it today. So let's start off with the definition of psychological safety. The belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. Edmondson, 1999. At the core of that really is talking about making mistakes at work, that you will not be penalized, that you will not be embarrassed, that you will not be singled out if you were to make a mistake, if you were to use the privilege of autonomy and do things your way and it didn't work, that you would not be then isolated or excluded for doing so, or scolded in some organizations for doing so. So now how does that differ when you are looking at DEIB? Oh, sorry, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now, I believe psychological safety, the definition I just read out to you, is imperative in building inclusive cultures at work and also in driving diversity and equity and belonging. It's important to then talk about Timothy Clark's 4 stages of psychological safety. So Timothy Clark's 4 stages of psychological safety talks about essentially, as an individual in the workplace, you need to feel included, you need to feel safe to learn, you need to feel safe to contribute, and safe to challenge the status quo. And doing so without the fear of being embarrassed, marginalized, or punished in any way, shape, or form. Timothy Clark's 4 stages of psychological safety looks at inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, and challenger safety. And I think in order to really get it right, when we look at marginalized groups and we're looking at psychological safety for marginalized groups, is ensuring that we get each and every one of those stages correct. So stage 1, inclusion safety. Inclusion safety essentially is trying to satisfy that basic human need to want to connect and feel as though you belong in the workplace. And for me personally, that first of all starts with diversity. It starts with representation. We talk about equity and inclusion, but I think that comes after. The first thing really has to be diversity. So if I walk not work, but also work. But if I walk into an organization, I want to be able to see people that look like me. In order for me to feel psychologically safe, the first thing I want to see is representation. Are there individuals in this organization that look like me? Are they people of color there? And even when I say, are there people of color, essentially, I want to see Black people in the organization. Are there Black African Caribbean people that look like me in the organization? Are there women who are Black and African or Caribbean that look like me? Are there women in the organization who are Black African Caribbean and wear their hair in braids in the organization? And that's important, especially the hair part. And I'll tell you why. Because if I see Black women, for example, me personally, that wear braids in a workplace and are wearing their natural hair out, natural, 4C curly hair in the workplace, then that's one step of me feeling psychologically safe. And I'll tell you why. Because as an organization, you are asking me as a Black woman to come into your workplace and bring my authentic self there. And by bringing my authentic self means I have to bring every facet of my being. And that includes the way I wear my hair. That includes the fact that I speak with my hands. That includes the fact that I have an inner city London accent. That includes the fact that I am a Black African, British, African, Sierra Leonean. And I need to be able to connect or see that in the organization. So representation within inclusion safety is the first step to creating a psychologically safe space for marginalized groups. Now, I've spoken from my own personal perspective as a Black woman, but that also is representative of other marginalized groups too. So do you have an LGBTQ plus representation within your organization? Do you have staff who have physical disabilities, but are also neurodivergent, but also speak about mental health and well-being in your organization? These little cues, representation of members of these marginalized groups, will essentially make individuals who feel a part of these groups feel psychologically safe. Another element of feeling psychologically safe as part of the inclusion safety is around your policies, your processes, your data, essentially. Are people disclosing? Do they disclose? And maybe it's a privilege because I work in this space, but I get to see disclosure rates as part of my day-to-day job data. That to me is an indication as to whether marginalized groups feel psychologically safe in order to disclose their DEIB data to you. Your processes and policies, what language are you using in them? If you're using gender-centric language in your policies and your processes, as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I will not feel psychologically safe, especially if I am, for example, non-binary and my pronouns are they, them. And you are using binary pronouns like she and he, I will not feel psychologically safe. And a third and final part for the inclusion safety element as part of the psychological safety today is on inclusive cultures. Now, this is going to be like the golden thread. It's going to feature in every stage of this conversation. But just thinking about inclusive cultures under inclusion safety as microaggressions and discrimination in your workplace. So what are the behaviors of other colleagues? Am I going, as a Black woman, walking into your organization, will I be confronted with microaggressions? Will I have to worry about colleagues repeatedly pronouncing my name incorrectly? Will I have to worry about colleagues wanting to touch my hair or asking me, where are you really from? No, Mabinti, I know you say Islington, but where are you really, really from? You can't be from Islington. No, where are you really, really from? Where are your people from? Will I be confronted with such microaggressions? And if I am, is there an avenue for me to report those and report them in a safe way that I am kept safe and I am protected? Because often what happens when we look at inclusion safety is that, yes, we get the representation right. Yes, we get the policy language, inclusive language right, but the behaviors of others are not right. So it's thinking about how then do we educate, engage, upskill essentially our colleagues within the organization to ensure that they are also being inclusive. And one of the ways organizations can do this is through training. And no, not death by unconscious bias training. DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, is much more than unconscious bias. It's looking at incivilities and microaggressions, low-level rudeness. It's looking at cultural understanding, cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, cultural humility too. It's also about thinking about how do we make our role models visible. So how am I ensuring that our most senior person who is from a marginalized group is visible, is advocating for, is talking about the issues that affect not just them, but also individuals who look like them or share their lived experiences within the organization. And then thinking about how then do we build up allies? How do we bring others along this journey and allow them to see that actually we are only stronger if A, we are operating in an inclusive and equitable way. And that's through, I believe, training. So getting in an external trainer to come in and speak to your colleagues, speak to your members of staff. And like I said, not death by unconscious bias, thinking about other areas of DEIB that they can all engage in training. It's also about creating informal learning sessions, like lunch and learns, for example, bringing together a group of colleagues or even an external speaker and creating that brave space where colleagues can openly and freely discuss issues that are happening to them and to others without being reprimanded. And finally, transparency in communication. I said this in my previous video, but I am of the mindset that communication is the key in all diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging pieces of work, particularly around psychological safety. How are we communicating our challenges? How are we communicating when we've got things wrong? Even with diversity, inclusion, and belonging. How are we letting staff know that actually in the past, we may have not got it right, but now we are working towards making things better? And for me personally, those are the elements I look to decide whether the space is safe enough for me to bring my whole authentic self to work. That's all from me today. Join me next week when we will look at stage 2, learner safety as part of the psychological safety umbrella, and talking about how learner safety is important in regards to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and also cultivating an inclusive culture. Thank you. If you enjoyed that episode and want to connect or want to see more content, make sure to follow me on these social media platforms: LinkedIn at Mabinti Eshaw, Instagram and YouTube at Monday Moments with Mabinti. I look forward to seeing you all very soon, and don't forget to like, follow, and share.